Today's topic is on gossip, and this is such a full topic. This is such a gutty and intricate conversation that it actually has to be put into two different segments because there's two ways in which gossip spreads, and that is one that is an internal issue and one that is a conversational issue. And so, this one in particular, we are going to talk about the person to person spreading of information. How do we have conversations that are deep, insightful, personal, without it turning to gossip and a spread of information that can harm people inside the church? Because that is my biggest concern. That is the entire passion and purpose behind Made to Walk, is how do we protect people inside the church while also being honest and getting people the resources that maybe they need. So let's dive right in. We are going to talk about the two most important words that you need to put into your vocabulary when dealing with any type of communication that is about something that is very personal. Maybe it is something that takes issue with harm, and that is confidence and care. Is this person sharing something with me in confidence, and am I sharing it with somebody else because I care, or am I violating that confidence because I really don't care and I just want to gossip? So that is the first thing that we have to do, is just take those two words, implant them somewhere in your brain, have them in the back of your mind, and use them as often as you can in conversation. Am I being told something in confidence, and how do I protect this information with care? So let's talk about threats, because I think that threats can be its own category of juicy conversations that can lead to spreading of details that don't need to be shared. And yet people feel like they can sometimes, I'm being helpful. I'm trying to be helpful. I'm trying to help this person. And what I've noticed is that two different kinds of people share passively by not thinking. Women tend to share more details than they need to know. And men tend to share because they're so passively like, well, I'm just telling you because it's not that big of a deal. And they don't realize the impact and how quickly information can be misconstrued, how it can be shared with the wrong parties, and how that person now has to walk around with this notion, this cloud above their head, like everybody knows my business. So how do we deal with a threat? Let's look at a particular threat here. My child can only be picked up from me because I have a restraining order for the kids against their abusive dad. So this is a really difficult subject, and yet it's something that commonly is an issue in the church. There may be a divorce going on. There may be somebody who is in a shelter, someone that is running away from a situation. There could be all kinds of toxic experiences that one is trying to stay away from. And we want to protect them from that, but we also have to share with other people on the grounds what is going on. So how do we do this well? Well, let's talk about how to execute this. First, we want to ask for documentation. So if there's a police report, if there is any decree that is in order, but also let's just say this is about, hey, my kid doesn't need to be in this same group of girls or group of boys because there's some bullying going on. Well, what makes you feel that way? We can't just really go off of interpretation of feelings because it's just not legally binding for us to actually execute anything well. So if they can show documentation of text messages, emails, threads, Facebook comments, social media comments that show, okay, obviously these two people have a conflict, and maybe it's not the safest environment for them to be in the same atmosphere. So we take that into consideration with documentation. If we find that it's necessary, we need to share physical identification with our security team. Hey, this is a picture of so-and-so's dad who is not allowed to be on grounds, is not allowed to have access to the child. Please let us know immediately if you find that this person is on grounds, so on and so forth, and then go through those crisis security details. And if you do not have a crisis security plan in place, now is the time to have the conversation about that. I can give you resources. You can email me at madetowalk@clvplanners.com, and I can give you resources to a great guy who does this day in and day out that can help you to build your church security plan, find the loopholes, and find resources that are going to best implement safety into your congregation without it feeling overdone or overly aggressive. So those things need to be put in place. People need to know what to do in those particular situations. 4, we inform necessary details. So let's just say in this particular example, we've got this child who is going to be in childcare and dad cannot pick child up. So we have to tell teacher something, but we don't need to tell teacher everything. Obviously, they don't need to know the GC details of, oh, you're never going to believe what happened on Friday with this family. That doesn't need to be the conversation. The conversation needs to be strictly, hey, you know what? You have Sally in your class. Unfortunately, mom and dad are going through a difficult situation right now, and dad is not to have access to the child. So please don't let them take off by themselves, know where they are at all times. Don't let them go to the restroom on their own. If you see anybody lurking or asking about this child, make sure you flag down one of our security patrol that is in the halls and so on and so forth. And then 5, set those safety boundaries. So again, just kind of what I was talking about a minute ago. It's just, what does that look like? Explain specifically to the volunteer what that means, because they may be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do if someone approaches the classroom. Make sure you give them specific details. Here's what we do in this particular instance, in this particular situation. Again, if you do not have those security details and protocols in place and you haven't had any trainings on them, I highly recommend you do so. And 6, just confirm and consult your volunteers. We never want volunteers to feel like we're putting them in hot water and then just leaving them there. So just constantly assure them, hey, you know what? We're prepared for situations like this. Unfortunately, they're more common than you would believe. And so you just need to trust our process, know that we are here to protect you and answer any questions along the way. If at any time this feels like too much for you, we can definitely move you classes to put you in a different situation. Just communicate, over communicate. That's all I can say, is the more that you assure people and the more that you communicate with them, the more they'll trust your process. All right, so let's get into the next portion of conversations that can lead to gossip. Heavy content is something that is often shared. I'm sure you've heard the expression, prayer circles are really gossip circles. It isn't something that we're proud of as a church, but unfortunately, it is a reality. There are 4 different categories of people who respond to heavy content. The first one is the hot potato. The hot potato is someone who receives heavy information and cannot manage the expectations. Therefore, they throw the responsibility onto someone else. So I'm hearing something, you're telling me something that is really intense. I don't know what to do in this situation. So I turn to the first person I can find. I tell them what's going on. I'm like, you deal with this because I don't know what to do. And what that communicates is that, one, this person felt safe talking to you in this particular situation for whatever reason. It may be because you have a relationship or you've just built a trust with this person, but now you've just tossed them off to someone else. You've disregarded their trust. The other thing is that you've really made them feel like they aren't worth protecting because you didn't protect the information that they have shared. And so it can be really damaging to the person to do the hot potato motion. The ice queen or king, however you want to see it, is someone who avoids being ever told anything and uses disengagement as a judgment. So what does that look like? So maybe they hear from someone else about a situation, or maybe they've been told first party from someone something very heavy, maybe something very dramatic, and they are like, yeah, I'm not getting involved. Like, I just don't want to be involved. I wish I didn't know. How do I get out of this situation? I would like to leave. Where is the exit sign? And so every time they see that person in the hallway, they do that motion, like the where is the exit sign motion. And what I want to just really focus on in this particular subject matter of the Ice Queen is that sometimes doing nothing is a judgment. Sometimes your silence, your disengagement is a judgment. That person can reel with all kinds of feelings and expectations as to what you're thinking about them, what you know, what you don't know. And that can be really harmful to a person as well. The next person that we want to talk about is the manager. Someone who shares information with appropriate parties in the hopes to find a resolution. So this person thinks they're being super helpful because let's just say they've found out their friend's in an abusive situation. And they're like, my really good friend is a police officer, or, my really good friend is an attorney. And so I'm going to tell them what's going on and try to get feedback and help and information from them. Well, unfortunately, you're still spreading information. What I really want to point out in this particular category is that it is not always the responsibility of the person receiving information. It is also the responsibility of the person sharing information to make sure that they set really, really clear boundaries. So, for example, if I'm about to tell you something really heavy and I'm still in the emotional state, I'm not ready to make any decisions. I don't really have a clear vision as to what the future is going to hold in this particular situation. Then I may say to you, I'm about to tell you something really intense. I'm about to tell you something really hard and difficult for me. I don't know what I want to do yet. So please, I'm asking you not to talk to anyone yet until I've made a decision about what I want to do. Then if they go and tell anyone, it is a direct violation. But if you tell someone that you're in danger and you don't set any precedents or boundaries, that person feels obligated to tell other people. And then it's not really their responsibility at that point. So again, the conversation isn't always fault on one party or the other. Communication's about setting boundaries on both sides. A kingdom keeper is someone who asks oneself, is this my experience to share? So there's pros and cons in this. They really feel like they are protecting the information and not telling anyone. What I tend to find in really extreme circumstances is that there's more people that know about something that was happening that were not willing to say anything up front. And by the time it gets to the head administration, they're sitting here going, how did I not know about this? And then 5 people stand up and they're like, oh, well, we knew it was happening. Oh, yeah, well, I definitely knew it was happening. And they're like, why didn't you say anything? They're like, well, it wasn't really my story to tell. And so what ends up happening is that person feels like they're protecting someone else by not sharing information. But when there are multiple people who are experiencing the same protocols and violations that could be happening either internally or externally with a person, then it is really important to share that information. Okay, so let's talk about how to navigate an effective process. Now we've seen the different categories on how not to navigate the process, but how do we now navigate a positive process? So the first thing you want to do always, and I'll say it so many times, it's literally painful, but you want to listen first. Listen to what the person is actually saying. Intentional listening does not look like you thinking about smart things to respond or helpful resources to give them, answers to and solutions to their problem. It is about listening to what they're actually asking you, because sometimes people just need to vent. They don't want advice. They don't want solutions. They're not ready to hear anything. They just want to vent. So find out what the expectations are first. If they ask for your advice, then we can go into the process of what that looks like. And so active listening looks like mirroring. Mirroring is first and foremost making that eye contact, making direct. Don't be on your phone. Don't be texting. Don't be fiddling around. Don't be yelling at your toddler who's, getting into something. You really need to be focused in that moment. Find ways that you can say, give me 1 second. I'm going to give something to my toddler to distract them so that I can give you my full attention, because I really want to hear this fully, and I want you to know that I'm taking this seriously. Mirroring is the opportunity to repeat back what they have said to you, not you interjecting what you think that they're saying. And so we use words like sounds like. So the person maybe, I'm overwhelmed. I just found out this information. I don't know what to do in this particular situation. And my kids are scared and I'm scared. And so we mirror back by saying, sounds like you're really overwhelmed. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know what the first thing to do is. I'm scared I'm going to make a wrong decision. It sounds like you may need some help trying to figure out what the first thing you should do is. And when you start to open up that door, you can figure out what the person actually needs based off of what they're saying, not what you think they should do, but based off of what they're actually telling you. Again, make that eye contact and use questions that start with how and what. How and what are safe areas to be in? Do not lean into the whys. Why haven't you gone to your mother's? Why haven't you told your family? Why haven't you? It's very accusatory and it puts the person on defense, and they're not going to get very far with telling you much of the truth and what they need because they're too busy defending themselves and the decisions they have or haven't made. Or why did you let him back in the house? Or why did you answer the phone? Those why questions are very, very defense oriented. How and what allows them to explain the process fully, give you the full extent of the situation. What do you think it would look like if you left? How do you think he would react? How do you think your kids would feel? Let them really process through the information so that the two of you are processing information together. And then we really want to expound upon empathy. Empathy is a hard topic because what we don't want to do is enable. Empathy is a place where I can't imagine what you're going through, but I want to support you in your process to move forward. Empathy is not affirming someone's emotions so much so that they only get the high when you are bleeding them empathy constantly all the time. If they're coming to you with the same problem over and over and over again, that person's not growing and you are enabling through empathy. So it can be a really sticky situation. Like, how do I empathize with somebody without condoning and without encouraging or affirming a behavior? So the second category of this part is, the care process. How can we care for this person? How can we put in place protocols, people, procedures that can be resourceful in finding a solution to this? So we may have to involve law enforcement, walk them through what that would look like. Where do they go? Do they have to fill out paperwork? Can they get there alone? Do they need a ride there? Ask questions that are helpful. Don't ask questions that are accusatory by saying like, why haven't you filed a police report? That's not helpful. Do you need a ride to the police station so that we can go and file a police report? Let them make you feel like you are part of the process. Like, I'm here to support you. If you don't want me to go with you, that's okay too. If you do want me there, I'm just there to pray in the background or to just be there as a support, but allow them to feel like you are part of the process. They may need a therapist. Maybe it's not about a situation that is happening in the moment. Maybe it's about a past memory. I'm remembering some things from my past. I'm remembering some things from my childhood, and I'm having a really difficult time dealing with this. It's causing some depression and anxiety in my life. Okay. And so we start to think about, maybe this person needs a therapist to learn how to cope and how to process old memories. Legal aid. Do they need an attorney? Do they need some kind of fundamental resources that would protect them? And ultimately, do they need any church assistance? Are there resources within the church that they could utilize? Is there a shelter? Is there food? Is there, school supplies? Like maybe their crisis is that like me and my husband both lost our job at the same time, or we're about to lose our house. Like, what are things the church can do to assist in the process? The number one rule in crisis communication is to think of others first. It's so hard because our natural instinct is to use self-preservation. Our natural instinct is to think, how can I protect me and my family in this particular situation? Because now we feel like we're involved. And the truth of the matter is that if you think that God is so small that he hasn't thought through the entire process, then you truly aren't placing your hope in faith. So we have to think about what the other person needs. There is an accountability that comes with self-preservation, and we see that throughout Scripture. He really comes down on it very hard throughout Scripture. And I just want to caution people to that, because it does cause harm to God's people. It can cause harm to a church when you are navigating out of gossip and self-preservation, because you're like, oh, I just don't want to be involved, or I didn't know what to do. And so those responses sometimes are more damaging than the actual crisis the person is going through. So we have to be really, really, really careful in these times. Some Bible verses to lean on: a gossip betrays a confidence, so avoid anyone who talks too much. If you have a friend that just loves to tell you everything about anyone and everyone, then I highly, highly, highly suggest you to start making yourself little red flags of going, okay, something's up. I used to have this one person that would come up to me in the middle of Sunday school, come sit up next to me, and as I'm taking notes and listening to Bible study, she would lean over and she would start telling me all these things about people, and I would just look at her like, this is so not appropriate, and this is such not a time. And I constantly had to just say, this is not my information that I need to know. Like, this doesn't involve me. What are you asking of me right now? Are you asking me for advice? Are you asking me for anything? Or are you just telling me someone else's business? It can be really hard when you have a friend that doesn't really have those boundaries. And so gracefully just reminding them, like, hey, you know what? I can see this is really bugging you, but because it's really not involving me, and it doesn't affect the church, and it doesn't affect someone's salvation, it's really not something that I need to be involved in. And so I really pray that you can work through that, because you need to be able to not be spreading information. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. And this is my favorite. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life. I am the Lord, Leviticus 19:16. And so that anything is kind of a really big word, because you're like, oh, that could be anything. That could literally be anything. But when we put ourselves in check in those two words, constantly leaning back to confidence and care, constantly being in a space of, okay, am I being told this in confidence? Is this my story? Am I receiving it because someone cares? Am I telling it because someone cares? All of those things can always lead into these two words, confidence and care. So those are good ways to put personal checks in your heart, personal checks in other people when you're hearing things. It is okay to correct someone. I think sometimes, especially as women, and men too, because sometimes they don't know what to do in that particular situation, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm not going to participate in this conversation, but I think, I'm just going to step away from here, and I'm going to walk away from this table. There's certain things that are definitely there. Now, there is an entirely different subject matter that is about leadership and the gossip of leadership. And I say that with a preface, because biblically the verses are that leadership in the church is held to a higher standard of accountability. And so if it is about church leadership, then sometimes two or more people can have that conversation, because specifically, and I talk about this in the second chapter, if you haven't listened to, if you're, didn't think that it pertained to you, go and listen to gossip leadership. category because it talks about 2 or 3 people need to come to leadership before they need to do anything. So sometimes there's something very alarming that is taking place in the church with an individual, and a couple of people kind of need to go, are you seeing this? Yeah, I'm seeing this. Are you hearing this? I'm hearing this. We need to take this to the administration. We need to take this to the person. We need to figure out how to approach this situation because it could be very harmful for the church. That is a completely different category than, hey, my friend told me about, so-and-so drank too much last night. That isn't what we're talking about. So, again, go and watch that second segment. Anytime that we do these videos, know that there is an actual written out blog on them. So if you want to click the blog button on the app, or if you want to visit our blog on madetowalk.org, you can find the written out version, because sometimes people are like, how can I share this with just the content? You can do so through there. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to going over more tough subjects with you in future videos. Thanks.